Next, we have up Bilal and Nadia. I don't know who wants to go first. They were teenagers when their dad, Iqbal, was diagnosed with MSA. And sadly, Iqbal lost his battle this summer. They're now college graduates working full-time jobs. They're living with mom, with Cyrus here. And, I think you all have kids or grandkids, various ages. And it's helpful to understand what is this like for the young adult that needs to come to terms with this and what the reality is and how their roles and relationships change. So they're going to give you some insights and perspectives of what that's like. Thank you for coming.
Just to give you some background, I was about 16 or 17 when my sister and my sister's about a year and a half younger than I am, when we first kind of understood that something was wrong. We were on a trip to Italy. We were just walking on the street, and my dad just randomly fell. Like, why would this happen? What's going on? As I think a year or two went on, or maybe even a year, less than that, he started feeling dizzy all the time. It was not, you couldn't explain anything, and he couldn't really get through his daily exercises. But, as a kid, you don't really understand what's going on, let alone you're 16, 17, you're in high school, you're applying to colleges, all your life you're told everything is going to be okay, and you expect that, always expect it to be that way. Whether your mom tells you everything's going to be okay or dad's going to be everything's going to be okay, something always has a way of working out. When you first kind of hear this news, you come to realize, okay, this is, life is not as easy as everyone says. Life's not fair, things like that. Things go through your head. A lot of things go through your head, and you have to come to realize that, okay, it's kind of my time to step up. I was really, really close to my dad. He was my best friend. He taught me everything that I know. I follow his footsteps quite often. We think about the same things. We laugh about the same things. But I appreciate it. I also know that every case is different. So as you grow up, I was at home, and you would see him slowly not being able to walk. He'd go from his office to his home office from, the couch. He would put his walker down, and he'd do this little juggle walk, and just this little mini sprint to hold on, and then progressively gets worse and worse and worse. So one thing about that is I would always have my friends over. Everyone would come together at our house. It was really welcoming. My mom was always really welcoming. My dad was always joking around with everybody. So it was really, I had a good support group just in terms of everyone being able to see what I was going through, but also coming to explain that to what other people don't really understand what this is, right? So when I get to college, a quick story is you do have a lot of support, even when it's with us or with my sister. I don't think it's necessarily anything that anybody should be embarrassed about. I think, you just need to embrace it. You'd be surprised by how much support you have. That story I have, for example, I went to Penn State. Big state school, a college game is what you have to bring your parents to one of those. My mom and dad had no idea. They'd never really even been to a sporting event, let alone. So this is a whiteout game. It's maybe 110,000 fans in the stadium, 170,000 people around, and they're big tailgates. And just to get around from one end to the other, for me to walk there, it would take me 20, 25 minutes. Now, my dad was coming in a scooter, and there was a fence. For him to go around this entire fence, it would take him, you might as well just miss the game. I had 30 of my best friends just come over the fence, pick him up, and we all dragged him across the tailgate. So you can only imagine. So let alone with that, whether it be just even at home when I'm hanging out with friends or just going out and you're saying, hey, I have to go home and give my dad dinner or make sure my dad has lunch because Nadia's not home or mom wants to go relax and see a movie once in a while. Things like that do come up. But then certain things also, when you're talking to them and you understand, hey, I don't really understand what's going on, or, why can't you give me this answer like you used to? You also have to understand, what's going on in their shoes. He didn't choose to have MSA, of course. This is someone who was extremely successful and had a way with words and could convince anybody of anything. He was always, everybody was coming up to talk to him. Everybody was always laughing around him. And for someone to speak and write all the time and communicate very, very well, how difficult that becomes to somebody trying to express that. Where, imagine someone teaching me. He taught me about the market, how the market works, import, exports, textiles, things like that. And now he's still trying to teach me things like that, but just not getting all the way there, or slowly You can see that frustration there. So I think on my end, what I learned was that he gave his all. He gave a lot of sacrifice in his life, and so it was kind of my time to give back. I was lucky enough to travel the world, do a bunch of things. I've never heard the word no, which was extremely, extremely lucky. And so, at this point, I was saying, okay, now I've got to give it my all to give it back. So again, yeah, I think there's a lot of support. I think there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Tell your friends. People will come. You'd be surprised how many people will show up. Even small things that, in terms of doing activities together. We used to love going to the movies. In the later stages of when he developed MSA, it's hard to breathe. You have a lot of spit that comes up in the throat, and you make a lot of noise like like throughout the movie, for example. We used to, nobody wants to hear noises or sounds or someone breathing next to them in the movie for 2 hours long. But, having your kid there, giving that third person, just joking around with them, saying, that's what I used to call, surround sound. So, don't worry. And then even just in terms of just, coming home from work, you hear about, there's always a caregiver, my mom, which was my mom, for example, who's always going to the doctor's offices. And, you have obviously a bias. The mom wants to push in a certain direction. My dad was in a certain direction of thinking. The doctors are always giving their personal opinion. But then you have this third-party perspective, someone who wasn't at the doctor, who really is understanding from a blank slate, okay, what are we getting into? It's kind of like a really good, in terms of advising. So I know which doctors he loved, knows which doctors he didn't. Don't worry, Dr. Coffin and Palmer, he loved you guys. But it's an experience. And in terms of anyone has, a child going through it or, anything like that, I'm open to talk to anyone about anything. We've been through the stages of understanding what it was, going through it, coping with it, going to, further understanding it, going through all the stages, going to the hospital multiple times, and then even to the end stages. So happy to help with any part. Thank you.
Hi, I'm his sister, obviously, and I'm always reminded that I'm a year and a half younger, always. But he generally took all my points because I wrote them down first. But so I'll just generally say I was in high school when he was diagnosed about freshman, sophomore year. So just generally, I didn't know what it was. None of us did because it was so early. No one heard about it. No one knew about it. So I didn't know what was going on. There were went to the doctor's office. I didn't personally go, or my brother, but our mom did. And when we would hear about it when we come back, we would have family discussions. So that would really help. And then I would look it up myself and kind of understand what was going on. So, but as resources, I didn't go out or I didn't know about MSA in that turn. So, but that was when I started. I researched it a little bit, understood what kind of the steps that he was going through. And then you can kind of see the changes a little bit from when I was in high school. It was just the motor functions really, is just the walking a little bit, but which he needed a walker for. And I was living at home at the time. And then as I went on, I went to college. I didn't go very far, but so I got to spend a little time here and there with him, but you can kind of see the progression of what it was like doing family vacations or just going apple picking and things like that. It really takes patience, and you can't be embarrassed about what your loved one has or someone has. It takes time. So I learned a lot about that and really discussing what emotions, what we had. When he'd come back from the doctor's office, he would ask us what we think about his speech or things like that. And we would actually sit down and talk about it. And we would try and help each other with coloring books and things like that for therapy reasons. As he would have someone come over, you'd learn about it, and then I would watch from the couch or something and kind of take in what they're doing and try and help at home a little bit. And then after college, graduated, started working, and then we all ended up living at home. So we learned that that you have to take turns in doing something, and there are sacrifices. And yes, we were very young and we wanted to go out, live on our own, do those kind of things, but we took the initiative, and we all helped out in our own ways. Like when he would go out, I would stay home, and when my mom would be home a lot, and so that helped a lot. But at the end of the day, there's like lots of little things, like going to the movies, like he said, and doing those things. But one of the most important things that I learned, which was more at the end, which was the hospital visit. We didn't have a lot, and when we would go, I didn't really go, or my mom would just go because we were working her at school. So at the very end, what you kind of see his eating, would be less and less. His speech, he wouldn't talk as much, or like he wouldn't get out of bed a lot, and he wasn't feeling very well. So you couldn't tell personally that something was going to happen, but eventually something did, and he was brought to the hospital one day. I came after work. My brother was celebrating his birthday in Barcelona, and luckily I was there. My mom called me. I was more of the rock in the family, I like to say, so, and I know it's true. So I would be there for everyone else. I'm more of the middle of everyone. There's lots of screaming going on everywhere else. So I think it's very important, especially when you're there. We were there for 6 days in the hospital. And I mean, I slept there every day except for one, but when I wasn't there, it felt weird. So I think we ended up also having a great support system. There was family nearby. So they ended up coming to the hospital more for me and my brother, and everyone has a hard time dealing with different things and showing emotion different ways at the hospital. So I think if you have kids, or if you're someone young or anything, and you end up going to the hospital and they're there, I think if you can find someone that will help them more and stay with them, that's just more of it just helps a lot emotionally. Because a lot of people, you don't talk about what you're feeling or anything like that, so that just helps a lot. And yeah, that's what I really have to say, so thanks.
Thank you. I know that's very emotional. So I'm going to make you laugh. There will come a time when you will be the one telling your brother, hey, I'm a year and a half younger than you. I always remember Iqbal with a smile. He was one of the regular members of the support group in Summit. Always a smile on his face. And I know he's smiling right now. I'm very proud of the two of you coming forth and trying to help the community. So, and you heard it. They're willing to talk with you, your families. Just a lovely family. Thank you.